This is Kathy from Gadgets Top 321, and in today's video I'm going to be comparing the medium nibs from my collection. I'm going to do a writing sample so that we can see the difference between the line width and the wetness of each. I've got these pens inked up with Iroshizuku Tsukiyo so that the comparison can be fair. And I've got three 14-karat nibs. Those are the Pilot Stargazer, the Sailor 1911 Standard, and the Platinum 3776. And I've got three stainless steel nibs, the Pilot 78G, the Kaweco Perkeo, and the Lamy CP1. And I'm going to begin with the gold nibs. The Stargazer has a number 3 nib. Now, the Custom 74 and the Custom Heritage 92, all of those type of pens have a number 5 nib. It's just slightly bigger, but the feed looks like it's the same design. So I'm thinking that those pens would all write similarly. This will at least give you an idea of how they'll write. I really like the wetness of this pen. Inks that are going to have some sheen to them really shows up nicely, but it's not, it doesn't outshine the color of the ink. Alright, next I've got the Sailor 1911 Standard. Just a little bit more feedback. It feels a little drier. But surprisingly, it doesn't look like it's that much drier. And that's just the, I guess just the feedback, the shape of the nib. Next, I've got a Platinum 3776. This one doesn't feel like it has quite as much feedback as the Sailor. Maybe it's in between the Pilot and the Sailor. This one also feels a little bit drier. And it is just ever so slightly drier than the first two. It doesn't feel dry, it doesn't feel bad, just drier than the Pilot. Alright, now these are the stainless steel nibs. This is the Pilot 78G. And I'm anticipating that this will be drier. Less feedback than the Sailor or Platinum. This is the original 78G. Yeah, and that's been my experience. It's a pretty dry writer, but it feels nice and smooth. But you can see in the color of the ink, it's a little bit more pale than the first three. So you are putting down less ink. Makes it a good candidate for poor quality paper. Next I've got my Quebeco Perkeo all black. feels like it's a little bit wider, and that would make sense. This is a German medium. Yeah, it's on par wetness with the first three, but it does feel a little bit wider. This is a Percayo. And finally, my Lamy CP1, and I have been having some trouble with it lately. Let's see if it starts up. Okay, yeah. This has the interchangeable nib, and I change it, well, that little hard start there. I change this nib quite a bit between the medium and the extra fine, and it doesn't, see, I had a little trouble with the ink flow there. The nib doesn't fit as tightly as it did before, and I think it's maybe not fitting as snug onto the feed. But it does represent the dryness. It's a little bit drier than, say, the Percayo. It's not a super wet writer to begin with. All right. I don't know if I was clear on that, but the hard starts and everything, I think, have to do with the nib not fitting as tightly as it should. And let me zoom out a little bit so you can see. You can see that the Stargazer seems to be the wettest. It's the darkest, and the 78G is the driest writer, and you can see it's a little bit more pale. There's not a tremendous amount of difference in line width, but the two German nibs are just ever so slightly wider. Right, put down a little bit wider line. Yeah, and I would say the two pilots were the smoothest. The Quebeco Perkeo is pretty smooth too, but with it having that black coated nib, it gives it just a little bit of feedback. Not unpleasant. It's nice, but let's see. I didn't notice until I got my pilot medium gold nib that Sukiyo has a little bit of sheen to it, and I'm seeing it on the Stargazer nib. It's got just a little bit of a halo of red sheen, and I'm maybe seeing a little bit of it. It's not quite as noticeable on the Sailor, but I'm seeing some nice shading with the platinum and with the Percayo. And with the pilot and the Lamy, it's a little bit more flat. But that's how these medium nibs seem to compare. Another good resource for comparing nibs is Goulet Pens, their Nib Nook. Now, on the Nib Nook, I will say you can see how the line width compares, but it doesn't really give you much of a sense of the wetness of the pen. That's why I find YouTube a good resource, where you can actually see someone writing with the pen, or see several people and compare their experiences and see how wet the nib writes. Alright, if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.